You're sitting in a meeting. Someone is presenting. Calm, fluent, completely at ease. The kind of person who doesn't fumble for words or second-guess themselves mid-sentence. You watch them and think, almost involuntarily, they know exactly what they're doing. You make a mental note, file them under people who have it figured out. Then, a few hours later, they find you in the hallway, and almost casually they say, "I was completely winging it in there. I had no idea what I was talking about." And for a second, you don't know what to do with that, because they didn't seem like someone winging it. They seemed like the opposite of you, certain, grounded, unafraid. But apparently, underneath that was the same quiet chaos you thought only you were carrying. So here's the question that moment leaves you with. If they were performing, and you were performing, is anyone not? Most people have a moment like that, and most people do the same thing with it. They note it, find it briefly comforting, and move on. Oh good, even they struggle. And then life continues, and the feeling fades, and everyone goes back to assuming everyone else has something they don't. But that moment deserves more than comfort, because it isn't an anomaly. It isn't a rare confession from one unusually self-aware colleague. It's a glimpse at the underlying structure of how social life actually works, a structure that's usually invisible precisely because everyone is maintaining it at the same time. We spend a lot of time measuring ourselves against other people's surfaces, their composure in a meeting, their ease at a dinner party, the way they seem to occupy a room without effort. And because we only ever have direct access to one person's interior, our own, we draw a quiet automatic conclusion. That gap between how I look and how I feel must be mine alone. It isn't. Which raises something more interesting. Is confidence something people actually have, or is it something people do? That distinction matters more than it first appears. In the 1950s, a sociologist named Erving Goffman made an observation that was either deeply liberating or quietly devastating, depending on how you hold it. He suggested that social life is essentially theatrical, not metaphorically, structurally. Every interaction has a stage, an audience, and a performance. We adjust our posture, our vocabulary, our confidence level, our entire presentation of self depending on who's watching. And we do this so automatically, so constantly, that we stopped noticing we were doing it at all. He called it dramaturgy. The idea that we don't simply have a self that we then show to the world, we construct a self in real time for every room we walk into. Now, hold that idea next to this one. In 1978, two psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, formally identified something they were seeing repeatedly in high-achieving women, a persistent internal experience of intellectual fraudulence. The sense that despite all evidence of competence, you don't actually belong where you are, that you fooled everyone, and that eventually someone will notice. They called it imposter phenomenon. You probably know it as imposter syndrome. For decades, it was treated as a psychological problem to be solved, a distortion in self-perception that needed correcting. But here's what's interesting. The more it was studied, the more universal it became. It wasn't confined to a particular gender or profession or level of achievement. It showed up everywhere, in students, executives, artists, scientists. Estimates suggest roughly 70% of people experience it at some point. That's not a disorder, that's a pattern. And when you place Goffman's idea next to Clance and Imes's observation, something clicks into place. Imposter syndrome isn't a malfunction. It's what happens in the brief moment when you become conscious of your own performance, when the gap between the self you're projecting and the uncertainty you're feeling becomes suddenly uncomfortably visible. Everyone is performing. Imposter syndrome is just the moment you notice you are. So, here's where it gets both unsettling and strangely relieving. If performance is structural, if it's baked into how social life works, then the colleague who seemed certain wasn't more grounded than you. They were just further from the moment of noticing. The expert who speaks without hesitation, the manager who never seems rattled, the person at the dinner party who appears completely at ease in their own skin. They aren't operating from a place of solid, unshakable certainty that you simply haven't reached yet. They're constructing it, like everyone else. moment to moment. This isn't cynicism. It's not the bleak conclusion that nothing is real and everyone is fake. It's actually closer to the truth than the story we usually tell ourselves, which is that somewhere out there exists a category of people who genuinely have it figured out, and that you are, for reasons unclear, not among them. That story is doing quiet damage. The paradox is this: the very fact that you notice the gap between how you appear and how you feel is not proof that you're behind. It might be proof that you're paying closer attention than most. The curtain was never hiding someone more real than you. So what do you do with that? Not the comfort of it, the implication of it. Because if everyone is performing and the performance is structural and certainty is something constructed rather than possessed, then the thing you've been waiting for is never going to arrive. That feeling of being fully ready, completely certain, unambiguously qualified, it isn't something that accumulates over time until one day it tips over into confidence. It isn't waiting for you on the other side of more experience, more knowledge, more proof. It was never the prerequisite. It was always the performance itself. And that's where something quietly shifts. The people who seem most at ease in difficult rooms aren't the ones who stopped feeling the gap. They're the ones who stopped waiting for the gap to close before they walked in. They learned, consciously or not, to perform competence while fully aware that they're doing it, not as deception, as participation, as the willingness to show up inside the uncertainty rather than behind it. The realization that everyone is figuring it out as they go isn't the moment the ground disappears. It's the moment you stop mistaking the ground for something it never was.
You should watch this video next. I think you will like it.